internet, tell me the difference between stupid and illegal, and I'll have Shahir arrested.
I dare you to tell me the difference between stupid and illegal.
I don't know, but this is the only podcast about the film The Big Short. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I'm Shahir, and I'm still free.
You're free for now until I figure out that weird quote from the movie. And yeah, we're going to be talking about The Big Short today.
And this is the first movie in a while, now 7 films, that isn't in the Star Wars universe.
Well, now, I mean, let's see if we can do the mental gymnastics to get us there.
Can you do a crawl for The Big Short in the Star Wars?
But maybe there's a young housing lender who is an orphan who learns the way of math and then becomes some sort of Sith Lord. I mean,
I feel like Lucas would include this narrative in the prequels
yes,
if he could.
of course. But we're not going to talk about Star Wars. We've talked about Star Wars
too much
for a long damn time. So let's talk about a film that is probably, other than the taxation thing, the farthest away from Star Wars we could kind of get.
Yeah. Should I describe it to you?
Just Shahir, for those at home, please just talk about the movie for a moment.
Okay. This is a difficult one, and admittedly, I was kind of dreading doing this conversation because
Why?
Because before I get into the synopsis, the premise of The Big Short is to really give you full details of how the financial crisis happened. And even though characters...
Of course, we're talking about the 2005 start to 2007 and then the
2008 meltdown, yeah. And the thing about watching it is even though the film breaks the fourth wall to stop and tell you how things happen, I actually... personal note, I have a background in I have a degree in accountancy.
Whoa. Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't realize we had a celebrity on the show today.
An accountant celebrity who's never practiced.
I account you for a
and
celebrity.
who can't balance a checkbook nor fill out his own tax returns. But with that in mind...
I'm less excited.
I still am struggling with what a synthetic CDO is, or how collateral debt obligations work, and how the actual mechanisms of this film work. So, disclaimer alert before we start the discussion. If you have a background in macroeconomics, if you are a person who works in finance and understands exactly how the financial collapse happened, we will probably make mistakes within the next hour.
Well, yeah, you're going to get mad because our excuse for most of these complex, like really intricate systems is going to be like a wizard did it. So like that's where we're at, just so you know. So we're trying to review this film, which is very data heavy.
Yeah.
And I don't care how many sexy Ryan Goslings and Brad Pitts you throw at me on the screen.
Oh, they even had they had a Margot Robbie in there, but you gravitated straight towards the Ryan Gosling.
I mean, he's in there more. And listen, I haven't seen her Harley Quinn yet, so I don't know if I'm still in love with her.
All right. So here's what The Big Short is about.
Right.
When 4 outsiders saw what the big banks, media, and government refused to, the global collapse of the economy, they had an idea: The Big Short. Their bold investment leads them into the dark underbelly of modern banking, where they must question everyone and everything.
Everything.
Now, here's the unusual thing. The Big Short, which, as by the synopsis I've just told you, sounds like something that an Oliver Stone type of person would make.
Sure.
But it's made by Adam McKay, who, if you are keeping score, is the director of Step Brothers, Anchorman, The Other Guys, and a lot of movies like that. I'm trying to think what else
When I first heard that he was
Talladega Nights.
Yeah, when I first heard he was doing this film, I thought it was very strange. And then watching it initially, I thought it was strange as well. But then after it had a chance to let it digest a little bit, if you think about it, the way and it's a little bit of a leap, but the way that the comedy is handled in this movie, while it's not over the top like all of those wonderful Will Ferrell spectacles that you kind of just listed, the pacing of the way a joke is told is very similar.
Yeah, and the one thing that this has going for it, well, it has a lot of things going for it.
Sure.
But the brevity with which a joke kind of lands in the middle of a serious discussion about how people are going to be affected by the financial crisis is actually really welcome. On the other side, this is no, McKay kind of leans on his comedy history rather than, going for something a little bit more absurdist in the way that, say, Kubrick did with Dr. Strangelove.
Right.
Which, I'm not saying every film needs to be Dr. Strangelove, but it's...
You heard it here first. Shahir said every film needs to be Dr. Strangelove.
But the thing, I guess the amazing thing about this film that, at least about the financial crisis in general, is that you start to go, this is nuts. People like the way people approached buying houses back in 2005, 2007, with no money down, poor FICO scores. Basically, the idea was you could just buy a house and, because the housing market was completely solid and stable, you were guaranteed at least a 20 to 30% return.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, what The Big Short really posits and our first character, Christian Bale, kind of really sees is that is a recipe for disaster. And it led to the entire collapse of of the housing market and the financial markets in 2008. So it's, look, already we've not talked about characters. We've not talked about story. We've just talked about a big abstract thing that happened.
And this is something that makes sort of reviewing this film difficult, I feel, because yes, we're going to talk about the four main guys, really, and actually this guy like 6 or 7, really, but the four main actors that are sort of there, and we're going to talk about sort of the steps that they take to go through the film and basically break down this horrible thing that happened. But a lot of the discussion of this, and it's hard to break away opinion and passion about the actual horrifying incident and the film itself about it. Like the film itself, at first I thought this was going to be a little bit of a Wolf of Wall Street sort of vibe, and it does it slightly, but not to the same panache that Scorsese sort of sets up for his film.
Yeah, definitely.
This is not Goodfellas 3. It's kind of an opposite sort of thing to that vibe, because this time we're following kind of the good guys. Because they're all different. This is let's go into the characters real quick because we're right here.
Okay, so you've got Christian Bale plays Dr. Michael Burry, who is the head. Basically, all these guys head up hedge funds,
and they're real people, right?
No, Michael Burry is a real person.
Okay,
I think Ryan Gosling's character is. Everyone else is based on a real person, but not quite directly like Michael Burry is. And you can see Christian Bale is doing his somewhat method acting thing. Michael Burry really was a guy with one eye who was a medical doctor who got into science, who's probably has some, got into finance, who has some semblance of Asperger's or, an inability to communicate with humans one-to-one.
Sure.
But Christian Bale's Michael Burry, or Michael Burry's Christian Bale, discovers after a detailed analysis of collateral debt obligations that many financial instruments that are traded by banks are propped up on terrible housing loans. He actually goes through each individual loan inside a collateral debt obligation, and that's kind of a crazy thing to do.
You got to be some serious OCD to actually have that go down. And that's something that I find very interesting about this whole concept of what this movie is based on and the actual collapse itself is it took a borderline savant character guy to actually look at all the shit that no one wanted to spend the time to look at because everyone was like, nah, it's fine. But you're just stacking shit upon shit upon shit upon shit upon shit. And I don't know, and this movie does a kind of a good job of like not really, it kind of in the very beginning, it paints like no one knows that this is shitty but him.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's amazing about, we're going to be talking about it, I think we're going to have difficulty dispersing real life from the movie at some point. Right. But the amazing thing about real life, I guess, is that all of this information is available to the public. It's not a secret that the collapse was that housing collateral instruments were based upon shitty loans.
Sure.
And it makes me think kind of now about the way our lives are run right now that are based on terrible decisions. So, one of the things I'm really obsessed about is contract law. I know that sounds super nerdy, but like,
not in this house.
Every day we sign terms of agreements, contracts with your service providers, rental contracts that we
agreements
that we never read, and it's like.
Fun fact, you own none of your music.
Yeah, and we never look at any of these things, and it's like, what would it take for that little thread to unravel? Now, obviously, it's not the same in the case of like a Verizon. Well, think about it this way: if everyone suddenly rejected their Verizon contracts because they were found they were illegal by law, and Verizon collapsed, that would cause such a domino effect in that industry.
Yeah,
so it's amazing to me that the information that this film trades upon is so publicly available. And I think when I'm watching this film, there's such a seething sense of anger about how obviously people are being swindled. You know, people are being swindled. People are being cheated. People are being rused out of their money.
But you know what's wonderful and sort of what the film does a great job at? You're absolutely right. What it does a good job at, because at first you're like, I went into this thing being like, this is about big banks screwing people.
Yeah.
And it is.
Yeah.
But it does it in a weird sort of way, and it kind of, when it breaks down all of the shit that different people are doing to have their little pieces of horror that they're throwing into this pot. Like, they go and they talk to all of these people that, like, on the bottom level, that are actually selling some of these
mortgage brokers.
Mortgage brokers. One played by Schmidt from New Girl, who is so, I'm so happy to see him getting work because he's fucking awesome. He was a real slimy guy.
Okay, yeah.
But not the dude bro slimy guy.
Okay.
His buddy.
Okay.
And yeah, like, so, like, they're lying to their clients to sort of get them to do this and do this thing, and they're thinking that they're just going to make money off this client, but they're never thinking above what that's going to do when things are foreclosed or whatever the proper word is for defaulted. I don't know.
Yeah, defaulting on loans.
So then they have those people. Then you have the people later on. Steve Carell's character, who we'll talk about later, goes and talks to a woman who works at the agency that's supposed to be overseeing all of the way that
credit rating agencies.
Yeah,
Standards and Poor's.
But they think because housing has been so stable that they don't need to check this stuff on the regular.
And they're also because they're a regulatory board, but they're also a private company that gets paid for their ratings.
Right. So they can't, if they give bad ratings,
they'll go to
their competitor. So, and we're talking about the banks again. So it's like all of these people, and this film does a masterful job of showing you all of the tiny white lies that everyone in this industry sort of makes to get their day to go by better or to maybe make a little more money. And all the way, some of them are a little bit shittier and more scummy and more money. But, like, I thought about it this way, and the film does a great job at sort of painting everyone as people, not like a monster coming to get you.
Yeah.
Think about all the white lies you tell in a day.
Oh, hundreds.
Okay. So it's like, and think about even like at work or like whatever, like just the little things you do to make your job go a little smoother.
Yeah.
That you've learned, that you've whatever. That's what a lot of these people were doing. The problem is these things, I mean, this kind of stuff that a smart person would see, and it's hard to see the forest through the trees and all that jazz, but like would see and be like, oh, this should be something that's regulated like medicine. Because the economy is a organism. It's a living thing that you can poison by doing this shit. This is the equivalent of eating nothing but fucking Cheetos and Runts candies for like 6 months and being like, oh, it's fruit.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so because it's in the shape of fruit.
Yeah. And people were making money.
People were making money. And so it's this weird sort of thing. I had this thought in my head. I was like, well, you know, some of these people are purposely trying to screw people. Some of these people are just trying to get by better because they're being screwed. It's this wheel of white lie nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, even Steve Carell's character, Mike Baum, or Mark Baum, says something at the beginning, which is that we have, you know, like banks have given us credit cards with 24% debt. We have been saddled with student loans that are completely impossible to pay. Mm-hmm. So the big, you know, us shorting a bank debt is kind of a fuck you to the banks.
Right. Well, that's the other thing too. The characters all come at this for different reasons.
Yeah.
Let's just break it down. So Christian Bale doesn't really have a reason or not. He just thinks he's running his part of his fund as best he can. No one believes him, obviously, because it's a crazy theory. But he's just doing what he's always done, trying to get the best deal for his money.
Well, so I'm going to try and explain what he does or what The Big Short is poorly right now.
Okay.
But basically what all the characters are going to do.
But they do it for different reasons.
Different reasons is that they see that the housing bubble will eventually burst. So they're going to create a debt obligation, basically an insurance policy against it bursting. For it bursting. It's basically like, as Ryan Gosling says in one of his like sort of hilarious explanations, I'm standing in front of a burning house and I'm selling you fire insurance. That's essentially what The Big Short is.
Yeah.
So go on. How does everyone else approach it?
So yeah, Christian Bale's doing it because he's just what he does, and he's kind of the savant character, and he thinks that's the best way to do it, and he sees an opportunity and takes it. Steve Carell's character is doing it as a fuck you to the banks because he's had some family trauma that didn't really have to do with the banks, but it kind of got you on the same page of like, he sees the little guy getting screwed constantly. Yeah. And he wants to say fuck you, and he'll make some money in the process.
He'll make a lot of money.
then you have Ryan Gosling's character who hears about it from
the report that Michael Burry's character puts out.
He just sees it as a way, pure money for money's sake. Basically, he's doing the same thing the banks have always done, just against them now. So there's no altruism in Ryan Gosling's character. No. And then it's like the 4th/5th and 6th character. These two like garage, I'm trying to think of what their job actually is. Like brokers.
Well, they were hedge funds, man. They had a small fund that they started in their garage with $100,000, and they managed to turn it to $30 million.
Right. So, but then they're trying to play with the big boys, so they get a long gone master of the arts, of the mathematic arts, Brad Pitt, who has since left the game of all of this banking nonsense, and they try to get him to sort of back them because they figured it out as well.
Yeah. So everyone's basically a handful of people have seen that the financial collapse will happen and are going to
try to profit off it.
Now, do those sound like heroes to you?
Steve Carell's is the only one I would say is the most like a hero. But,
yeah, and I'll preface this: films don't need heroes. I'm just saying that the film clearly is on these 4 people's side because they're the smartest people in the room, so to speak.
And this does lean on the whole thing about like big banks bad, and there's a lot of shit wrong with banks, like there's no question. But like, I think this is by no fault the filmmaker. This is just a thing that you're gonna go into if you're gonna make a movie about big banking.
Yeah,
there's no way they'll be the good guy. Like so. By default, these characters are our heroes, whether he wanted them to be or not. They are the people that you are rooting for through the movie.
Well, it's interesting. Like I said, I have a finance degree, and I went through commerce school in New Zealand, and a lot of my friends ended up as bankers. And I was talking to a friend of mine in London who works for a big bank there, who mentioned that it has never been more difficult to be a banker now than it has ever been. 10 years ago when he started in the banking industry, it was kind of like, oh my God, you're a banker. That's amazing. You're probably going to make a lot of money. Now people say, oh, you're a banker. You're a wanker. Essentially, like you're a terrible person for what you do. And he's just a guy who works in finance, like he has a regular day job like the rest of us. So banking is the big boogeyman of this film. But there are other sides to this coin as well. There's an HBO film a few years ago that came out during the height of the crisis as well, called Too Big to Fail, which is about the regulatory side of this, where I think we were following Hank Paulson and Glenn Bernanke, the two senior regulators in the White House at the time.
Sure.
As they basically saw the collapse coming as well and tried to stave it off by instituting a bailout for the banks. And the great, the thing in that film is that and it happens in this film as well because it's well documented that this was the case, is that the banks received large bailouts which were used to funnel back into their own bottom line, including bonuses for their executives.
And that stuff we all kind of knew.
And it was never intended to be that way. But so that's the kind of broad strokes of the plot. And we're on a thing now where we're trying to stop giving you spoilers, but there's not too many spoilers for this film.
Yeah, spoiler alert, the American people got fucked.
So, Matt, what did you think of the film?
I think it's... To call it enjoyable is wrong, because I think it's one of the better horror films of the year. Like, I watched it, and after I was done, I felt sick. Yeah. Like, and that's not like a slight to it at all. That's just sort of, how it rolled for me, because I watched it and I wasn't personally hit hard by I didn't own any property. My family's house had already been long paid off. Like it's all, I was far away from this and I saw it happening. I saw the recession and like all that stuff too. Yeah. And the recession hit me just like it hit everyone else, but like the housing part of it never hit me.
Yeah. So there were runoff effects though to everyone. Of course. Mass unemployment.
Yes. And it's been harder to
wages.
It's been harder to get entertainment jobs since. Like it's been all that jazz.
Yeah.
But the point that I'm trying to make is I never thought about it too deeply, other than fucking A, like bailout, fuck, god damn it, like that's just piss, whatever, because we're all paying for it.
Yeah.
And after watching this film, you see these guys in the film betting against the banks, and then you kind of come to realize even the most altruistic of them by the end is just kind of doing the same thing the banks were doing in a reverse way to make money for themselves. Now, granted, they're screwing quote unquote the banks in the process, but not really, because we're paying the banks, so they're going to use that money to pay to these people. Like, there's no justice in this film. So when you actually are finished with it, while it is fun, and I love they break the fourth wall a lot, I love when movies break the fourth wall well, and this one does.
Yeah.
I was just left with the feeling of like, well, there was 2 hours of literally everything, no one I care about winning, and everything that I should care about being screwed.
Right.
And it left me with a real shit taste in my mouth. And I watched it this morning of this day that we're recording the podcast, and like, it kind of, when I was going to work, kind of put me into like fuck. Like, it always amazes me when a film can show you how fragile our ecosystem is, be that our planet, the environment, our government, or the economy. Like, it's run by people, and people are selfish. Like, that's through and through. I truly believe that most people, if you're left to their own devices, will get greedy. I honestly, and this isn't me calling myself out in a weird way, but I think that's true for me. I think that's true of anyone. You put someone in their own little chamber and left to make their own decisions, and you don't let them really think or see other people and the way things affect them, yeah, they're going to choose what's best for themselves. Now, granted, it's also a spectrum. There's that to total fucking evil, mwahaha.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I just was feeling pretty downtrodden. So it's so weird. Like, it's one of those things I even hark back to Beast of No Nation. Like, this movie is medicine.
Yeah.
It's flashier medicine than Beast of No Nation. It's more, it's got a ton of sugar, and Mary Poppins is singing to you while you're taking it. Or it's that girl in the bubble bath or whatever, or the chef or whatever, or Ariana Grande playing craps or whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say I would want people to see it, but I won't say that I enjoyed watching it, not because it was made poorly, but just because the subject matter hits. I mean, this is the definition of too soon, though, it should be seen. It's just something, this happened fucking, 6 years ago?
Yeah.
7 years ago, and we're still feeling the effects?
Yeah, it's not that long ago. And
what'd you think?
What did I think? Well, look, I am a sucker for this kind of movie. I love movies that tackle difficult issues and try to work them into the, take the abstract and work it into a narrative that we can follow. I personally don't think this film does a particularly good job of that.
Okay.
I think this film, essentially, to me, this film feels a little bit like a hybrid documentary with actors. Like, it's basically stopping to give you information, but it has actors reenacting scenes. Right. Whether it has a convincing through line as a story, I'm not entirely convinced. I think it's compelling material, and I think it's very well put together. I'm not a particularly, the style to me kind of felt a little gimmicky.
No, it was incredibly gimmicky.
Yeah, incredibly gimmicky, and a little. It got grating after a while to me. But the interesting thing is that when I watched The Wolf of Wall Street, for example, there was a scene in which Jordan Belfort's character, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, is explaining how the Steve Madden, the shoe company, how the IPO for Steve Madden's going to work, and basically how he's going to profit in any direction, no matter how it goes. And then he stops, and he's talking to the fourth wall, and he breaks it, and he goes, "You guys don't really care about this, do you? Let's just move on." And that scene always really irritated me about The Wolf of Wall Street, because although my opinion about The Wolf of Wall Street has changed over time, that scene, when I first watched it, kind of indicated to me that the film was more interested in excess than it was in detail. So it was more interested in the lavish lifestyle of Jordan Belfort than it was in detail. I've since kind of reconciled that with repeated viewings as to what the film's actually doing. Mm-hmm. But so when I was watching The Wolf of Wall Street, I was basically like, man, I want to see a film where they really get into the nitty gritty. And then
ask and you shall receive.
And this is a good example of, like, be careful what you wish for, because The Big Short delivers exactly what I was asking for, and it loses the essence of what was good about The Wolf of Wall Street, which is that it has a clear, thorough narrative line. So the films that I kind of love like this, like there's a few movies that I can watch every year, And I love movies where it's the little guy against the system. Those are kind of my, like my Star Wars. They're what really gets me excited. Yeah. And so the films I love The Insider. I love JFK. I love Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Those are movies I could watch at the drop of a hat.
Okay.
And then other films like this are The Corporation, Inside Job, The Floor, and Enron, Smartest Guys in the Room. Now, if you notice, of the 7 films I just mentioned, 4 of them are documentaries.
Right.
And 3 of them are narratives. And I feel like this film, The Big Short, is trying to do the informational dump that say Inside Job or The Corporation does, but kind of missing the narrative through lines that Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and JFK and The Insider do really well. It's there. It's certainly there. But I mean, I don't know how you felt, but like the film kind of wants to take you through this journey of people getting excited that they could make money, then realizing the reality of how they're going to be making this money. And then in the third act, what we realize is that it's potential, like all these people have made this giant bet against the economy, and it might not happen because the regulatory system is so flawed and so corrupt that they
keep lying. Basically, banks and regulatory things keep lying to keep things afloat as long as they can.
So essentially, like for example, Michael Burry's character has bet $1 billion against this crash happening, and it's not happening because the banks keep covering up their losses and the regulatory agencies keep supporting them doing that. So the film kind of starts you with this, oh, we could do something really cool. We're going to buck the system. Then it's like, then it's the excitement of bucking that system. Then it's finally then there's the possibility that it won't happen. And then finally there's a realization when the crash finally happens, spoiler alert, it does happen.
Oh God.
That it's really Brad Pitt's character who says something along the lines of, this is why I hate finance, because it turns every human being into a number. Mm-hmm. And what you have to realize, and Brad Pitt's character confronts his 2 younger brokers and says to them, what you have to realize, and I'm paraphrasing badly, Brad Pitt is a very good actor and does this better than I will, mm-hmm. is that you've just made money off people losing their homes, their jobs, their livelihoods. You're about to profit on the collapse of the American economy. And the finale of the film is really positing that although these 4 people, rallied against the system, the system is broken and people lost, and there should be some remorse for the fact that this is the way it happened. And I don't know about you, but that didn't purely. I think on an intellectual level that does make sense to me. But on an emotional level, the film doesn't. That realization doesn't resonate for me, and it may to me it has to do with this structural style that the film has, which is this breaking of the fourth wall with characters talking to each other, with basically the film stopping through midway points to explain things through document. They even do this funny thing where they bring in celebrity actors to explain complex financial instruments to you.
Which is fun.
It's fun, you have, and they do fun things like, hey, here's Margot Robbie in a bubble bath, sipping champagne, explaining what a collateral debt obligation is, and here's Anthony Bourdain explaining how collateral debt obligations go bad, and here's Selena Gomez explaining what a synthetic collateral debt obligation is, and that on top of the breaking of the fourth wall, the lack of singular narrative structure, a singular narrative through line makes it difficult to follow this as a journey as much as it's kind of a series of events.
And something that threw me out of the film a lot, and kind of the topic brought me back in, I feel, more than the film did, is, and this might just be my editor brain talking, but the continuity, the small time continuity in this film is atrocious.
It's funny, I was watching this and...
It was almost, I wonder if it's a choice.
Well, I was watching this, and this is going to sound terrible, but this, to me, feels like a film that was edited in Adobe Premiere. And it's like that's not technically correct. I don't even know if that's the case. But what I mean by that is that this feels like where you have every choice available to you. So you start throwing, and the pace at which you can put things together is so quick that you may not consider those decisions as succinctly as you might.
I don't know if I'd base that on the editing system so much as the time frame you're given to cut a piece. But all right, that's apples and oranges.
Yeah, but I think you know what I mean when I say it feels very haphazard. Now the style of the film is haphazard and kinetic and
right,
and,
but it threw me. It threw me off. Not only like the bigger sort of editing choices, but the smaller ones, like the Margot Robbie in the bathtub had her pick up and put down that champagne glass nine times before she did, and like it didn't connect where she was spatially. So I was like, oh, they did a bunch of takes and just tried to pick the best one. Well, but it's just fine. That's what movies are. Yeah. But then like later on, like where they were doing an example with the Jenga pieces with the different type of from AAA to triple B or whatever, like find it or whatever.
Yeah.
A wizard did it. They knock the thing down violently and then all of a sudden it's back up and I'm like, what the fuck? So there's lots of moments like that took me out of it.
Yeah.
The film itself, again, I said in the beginning it's going to be hard to review a film like this because it's too close to home. It's too, like, this is stuff that everyone in America is still, at some way, it felt the hit of it when it happened hard, and now we're still sort of reveling back from it today. And so you can't, like, go into this thing objectively and, like, do I really care about this movie because it's well made in a style that I enjoy? Or do I care about it because it's an important thing that happened in American history that's still affecting the United States up to today? And there's not a lot, like, your documentary that you brought up is one of them. But, like, if you even look at who, on a daily basis before this movie, who the fuck thinks about the housing collapse anymore? Like, even though it's affecting us, who the fuck thinks about it? This movie ends with a quote. Like, they have a bunch of facts about what every character is doing or whatever. And then at the end, it said something about banks are starting to, I don't even remember what it is, but it was like something like banks are starting a new thing called blah, 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 which is basically the
collateral debt obligation again. Yeah.
CD or whatever it is. So it's like, you're like, it's 2015. This already happened. And the fuckers are doing it again because they fucking know that they are, quote, too big to fail.
Well, that, and also we have a short institutional memory of the way the world works. Like we don't really see how these bigger problems manifest themselves repeatedly over time. And, like so I would have to posit that I'm probably, like I'm somewhat of a, as far as economic theory goes, I'm a fairly liberal thinker.
Genius. Oh, no.
Liberal thinker when it comes to economics, fairly lefty kind of leaning. And so to me, the notion that that basically unregulated financial markets are a good thing doesn't hold water for me because I think, one of the big, I think it was Alan Green. I do have an interest in economics. And so I think it was Alan Greenspan who
keep telling us that, Shahir,
who talked about he suddenly realized that there was a flaw in unregulated financial markets. Basically the right wing theory is that unregulated financial markets will correct themselves. People will, basically if something doesn't do well financially on the market, that's an indicator of its failure to exist. But Alan Greenspan had some conversation many years ago, and I think it's what the documentary The Flaw is based on. And when I say flaw, my funny accent, it's F-L-A-W, the flaw.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Right. Okay, there you go.
I was like, it must be about a floor somewhere.
Yeah, well, I was looking at your face when I said the floor, and I think you looked at the floor.
I was this floor? The flaw.
The flaw.
There you go. Welcome to our native land.
That sounds so strange to me. But he basically posited that and I think Adam Smith might have even talked about this, is that we believe that all people are rational actors when it comes to the financial market, which is that we will do what is in our own best interest, and we will always do certain things because they are of interest to us. But the truth of the matter is that human beings are irrational players in every game that they are, which means is that we're not robots. We will do things that are irrational. We'll do things based on emotion. We will act selfishly, act greedily.
Has there ever been a human interaction that, no, I'm not saying in between two people, I'm saying like an activity, whether it's business or a game or something, where no one has ever cheated?
No. And there are great studies about how, there's studies on both sides. One is that cheating is essentially a necessary human trait that has supported our evolution to be the top of the food chain today. And then another one,
I guess it is sort of cheating to shoot a shark rather than get in the water with it and punch it in the face.
Exactly.
All right. Touche, science.
And then another theory that altruism is actually there's a book called Altruism about the guy who coined the phrase, or actually did some research into the history of human altruism, who basically figured out. Well, his theory is that altruism is a demonstration of power, and although we might think of it as being selfless, it's actually a demonstration of how much power one can exert over another person.
Fuck, I'll go one step deeper into the rabbit hole. Like altruism in general. There's no such thing as altruism, because why do you do a good thing, Shahir?
I do it because it makes me feel good.
There you go.
If that's the very baseline.
Of course,
level.
it's the baseline thing. Again, that's not saying you're selfish. That is a function of your body.
Yeah.
Your body gives you endorphins to make you feel good when you do a good thing. So you, as a button pushing endorphin lover, want that thing. So you're like, oh, I'm gonna do good things. Now, granted, that helps other people, makes other people's endorphins get released.
Yeah.
But to say that there is a selfless act or an act of altruism is truly a lie. We're getting off topic.
We're getting off topic, but I guess the point I wanted to come back to when I was talking about the way that the film doesn't narratively engage me is similar to the way that we talked about Beasts of No Nation. If we were to talk about this film in two different ways, one is the actual subject matter. I think we're both in agreement that the subject matter is horrific. There are, it's certainly a demonstration of the fact that human beings are shitty people. But on the other side of it, can we divorce the film from its subject matter?
It's so fucking hard.
And because I think we did this with Beasts of No Nation, where we said, if I recall, that we both were felt that it was great that the film exists, but weren't necessarily narratively engaged in that film. And I think for me,
it's the same thing.
It's the same thing for this film.
I will say this: I'm just sort of like in my brain ripping them apart, taking the symbiote off, if you will. And this movie, if this was about, let's say if this film was about I'm trying to think of something that no one cares about. The rise and fall.
Well, I've got a good example for you. Actually,
please.
Sabermetrics. In Moneyball.
No, a real thing.
That's yeah.
Okay, but no, Moneyball is an interesting thing. I like Moneyball. I think Moneyball is an engaging story about a topic that I don't give a fuck about.
Exactly. When I saw the trailer to Moneyball, I think I tweeted something about along the lines of like, who wants to watch a movie about how a system works?
This is the opposite.
Yeah.
This is a mediocre film. That's what I will actually say about a topic matter that's so important that it transcends the film's inherent flaws and somewhat mediocrity. It's serviceable.
Yeah,
like,
it's not a bad film by any stretch of the imagination.
But it's also like, think about if this movie was about if Moneyball was presented in the way this film was, in a series of kind of vignettes about semi-real people dealing with the minutia of the way baseball works, with no one that in the film that you really want to win.
Yeah.
That's not interesting at all.
Yeah, and it's because it's interesting because Moneyball is written by Michael Lewis as well, which The Big Short is based on a Michael Lewis book as well. But the thing that Moneyball has going for it is it has Aaron Sorkin writing it,
right?
And
he wrote characters and not just bullet points.
Well, I think he found a way to he finds a way to make the abstract real. He finds a way to take the abstract concept of what sabermetrics is and makes it real. So. I was shocked that I enjoyed Moneyball as much as I did.
I know, it was such a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I was like, there's no way I'm going to enjoy this movie. I don't like baseball. I can't imagine enjoying a movie about a statistical system. But Moneyball managed to find a way, and I think the director was Bennett Miller as well, who is a very strong director. He did Foxcatcher and Capote. So you can feel at the edges of the frame, Adam McKay's anger about this, and he has got such considerable talent as a comedy writer and a comedy director that he manages to infuse that anger with some brevity.
Yeah. And
it's great. But unfortunately, the film, for me personally, lacked the narrative through line to make it land.
Yeah. because it's so funny. Like, the only reason this film ends is because the crash happened.
Yeah.
It's not that the film was building to the crash happening. It's time is going on whether or not this film is going, and that's sort of the weird thing. The film almost seems like something that's latching on to something else and being like, but I got to tell you about this. Oh, wait, this happened. I got to, and then they got to get the money. Like, here's what it is. The film feels reactionary to its subject matter and not the other way around.
The subject, because it's
I feel like it, and that's more documentary. It's what you said in the beginning. Yeah. This feels like a documentary with actors in it.
Yeah, exactly. And it feels like,
I guess it is.
And I'm not sure that if the intended effect was to inspire people to try and demand change. I don't think this film's going to do that.
No, and you just look at the marketing campaign of this movie too. Like what they're marketing is not the film you're going to get.
No, it's a very different film.
It comes off as a bunch of Robin Hoods played by super attractive Hollywood leading white men.
Yeah.
Going to go take on the big banks and fucking win and make some money. It's almost like banking Entourage in the advertising.
Now, there's one there. This is a little side note, but it's something I found when I just looking at the Wikipedia page for this book. And it was something I felt when I was watching the movie, but I kind of said, well, it's based on a true story, so maybe this is the way it was. But this is a real boy movie. It's like, it's all guys in rooms.
It's a real white boy movie.
It's a real white boy movie as well.
I even wrote, it's a who's who of white actors.
Yeah.
Male white Hollywood actors.
But it feels like men in rooms determining our future. I'm quoting a Fleet Foxes line. But when I went back and looked at just the Wikipedia page, it turns out that there was a woman who was a hedge fund manager who was key to all of this, and her name is Meredith Whitney. Now, I don't know the reason why her character wasn't included in the film.
Right.
There may have been legal reasons for it. There may have been adaptation reasons. Who knows? But I do know that other characters were fictionalized for the film, Mark Baum isn't a real person. He's based on somebody else. So the fact that this film doesn't include women or for most part, people of minority, minority colors, it feels like it makes it difficult to kind of go along with it as a piece of reactionary art.
And now we're learning, now that you're telling me that Mark Baum isn't a real character?
He's based on a real character.
Okay, but there's moments where Ryan Gosling, who kind of serves as a narrator, breaking the fourth wall all the time, Baum gets up during a convention and screams and does a thing.
And he says, this really happened.
He goes, this really happened. I was there. This was a thing. And I was like, now that I know that guy's not real, I'm like, oh, well.
It's based
sure,
the person.
Maybe a dude did that, but that has a little bit less of a reference. So we're running a little short on time here. So let's just sort of go in and do some final thoughts. You go first.
If I was to recommend it to people, I would say, watch it on DVD, watch it on Blu-rays, watch it at home when it comes on iTunes or whatever. I think, for me, that documentary, The Flaw.
You got it right now.
Inside Job. There are many, the financial collapse is well documented. And I'm not certain that this film is going to change things, but it's certainly an entertaining look at something else that happened in that period, which is this idea that people bet against it. Now, politically, is the fact that they bet against the financial crash a revolutionary idea, or even
no, there's been other things in history, like a great thing. Here's a shout out real quick. If you're into this sort of politics and sort of like history of things like this, there's a series that my buddy James Portnow does called Extra History. It's on YouTube, and he takes complex geopolitical, sometimes socioeconomical plots throughout history and gives you like a 7-part thing on what happened, who the main players were. It's very entertaining, and I suggest you check it out. They did one on the South Sea Trading Company back in the day, and it has a lot. Now that I'm sort of talking about it, it has a lot of similarities to how this happened. Just this was with more computers.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No. I mean, I think that kind of leads, like the way you just described that was much more engaged. And I feel like this film really wants to engage people on that level. It wants to generate outrage. It wants to generate, hey, the system is rigged and the house always wins, and that's not right. Now, we're certainly seeing some of the I think that's a popular wave of thought right now. If you're looking at the election, particularly on the Democrat side, it feels like this sense of inequality and the sense that the game is rigged is a key narrative that's happening in our culture right now. And I would argue it stems back to Occupy Wall Street in some capacity. But does this film inspire that outrage, or does it contribute to that narrative? I think it wants to. I think perhaps if you can get past those, if you can just watch it as a piece of information, then it will function in that way. And maybe the fact that it's a populist piece of information with big Hollywood stars like Brad Pitt, Ryan Gosling, and Steve Carell in it, that will help. But does it accurately reflect what actually happened, and does it generate the kind of outrage that'll make you do something? I'm not necessarily so sure about that, but see the film.
That's good. And my final thought is sort of this film, in a weird ass way, with its subject matter, does exactly what its characters do to the economy. It's taking a concept that is super high end and basically using it, twisting it, molding it to to your specific advantage, either the characters in the film or the film itself.
Yeah.
It's this weird Inception, dream within a dream sort of nonsense, and it does it, and it pulls it off. It pulls it off. The film gives you the information, but at the end of the day, like you said, is it going to inspire change? It's not great enough to, in my opinion.
It's not great enough to,
and if people losing real money and real homes and not seeing more than one single fucking person go to jail was not enough to make people rise up and go, what the fuck?
Yeah. I don't think this movie's going to do that.
This movie's definitely not. And I'm not saying they're trying to do it, but I think they're wisely manipulating a popular subject matter that affected lots of people to make a film and use the feeling that people have to that, about that topic in the movie's favor. So it's not great. I think you should see it just because it is interesting, especially if you haven't thought about it in a while. Just think about it again. But we do have to get going. Shahir, buddy, this has been the only podcast about The Big Short.
You can email us at onlymoviepodcast at Gmail. We have a Twitter account at onlymoviepod. You can reach me at www.shahirdowd.com. Matt Kroll, where can we find you?
You can find me all over the interwebs. You can find me at www.matthewkroll.com. You can find me on Instagram at Skeletor4 PREZ or Emperor MSK on Twitter. I don't think I'm going to consolidate it. I know I say I'm like, oh, no, I haven't done it. No, fuck it. It's all separate.
You can bet on us not delivering another podcast in time for the holidays. We'll try as much as we can, but if you wanted to, or you could make an insurance plan against us delivering something good.
Or, fun fact, maybe this will drop after the holidays. You don't know.
Ooh.
You don't know. Or maybe just bet against us. Can I borrow $5?